Have you figured out your niche? Are you helping adding value to other people's lives? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to Munira's Musings with your host, co-author of Conversations with Top Real Estate Investors Volume 3, Munira Zahabi.
Greetings from Chicagoland. This is Munira, the niche navigator, coming to you with a new guest, Dr. Julie Ducharme, all the way from California, sunny California. Welcome to our show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. So it's great to be here.
Thank you. So Dr. Julie Ducharme works with people and is a featured host and guest on ABC and Fox. I want to know what she does with people and how she got to her niche. So let's get right to it. But before that, let's talk about what this show is all about. Munira's Musings showcases people who have found their niche and helps others understand how it is possible to find your dreams. And your niche is never just too far away. All you have to do is tweak it, test it, repeat it with a little more tweaks. And you get it, right? And most people are afraid of finding their niche or getting to a point where they feel like they can't do a certain thing. Well, here, this show is all about you can do it, you will do it. Let's listen to other people's stories, and if they can do it, you can do it as well. So, Dr. Julie Ducharme, let's talk about how you found your niche.
It's great that you talk about finding your niche. I actually recently wrote a book called Authentically You, and it's all about finding your authentic path. And I thought early on in my life, I knew exactly what my authentic path was. I went to college on a sports scholarship, and I thought for sure that I was going to be a sports announcer. That was my plan. And it very much changed along the way. And I learned some very valuable lessons that your path is not always set in stone, and that you have to be open for when that path changes. And so I went and did the traditional, went to college, I played sports, I had a great opportunity to play overseas professionally, wonderful opportunities. It meant so much to me to get a chance to do that. And I came back and I thought, okay, I'll go into coaching and teaching at the college level, and this is what I'm supposed to do. And as I was thinking about doing this in my first 4 years of college, I was told by some different professors that you're not smart enough to go to college. You should drop out. And it was a real devastating thing for me to learn, because that's all I'd wanted to do. All I dreamed of doing was getting to go to college and to play sports and to chase my dream. And here I was being told that I was so not smart that I should drop out, not even go get a tutor, like you should drop out. And that was a real devastating blow for me, but thankfully I'm very competitive. And so, as I always say, I called my mom crying, and she did what any good mom should say. She said, he's an idiot, go get a tutor. And so I did, and I made it through, no problem. But as I started to get out, I followed the path that everyone said, you should go. They said, you should go X, Y, and Z here. And so I went on, and not that I don't enjoy teaching at the college level or coaching, but as I continued on, I was an instructor, and then I was a chair over 3 programs, and then I was a dean over 20 universities across the US. And I'd made it into that position really quick at a young age. And I was like, this is it. Okay, I've made it. I've done everything that everyone said I should do. I got all my degrees. I followed the path. And I found out that it wasn't a job that I enjoyed at all. In fact, a couple months in, I very much said to my husband, I want to quit my job. And he looked at me kind of shocked and was going, what? This is like everything that you've been trying to get to. And I'm like, this is not what I wanted. This is what everyone else thought I wanted or thought I should want. And so he was very supportive of me. I decided to reach out to some friends, and I had a mentor give me some really good advice. She said, Julie, you've got these small businesses that you've been working on. Why don't you build those? Why don't you grow those? I'll hire you on as, close to full time, but I think that, I've seen you doing this for years. I really think that's your path. And lo and behold, she probably did not realize what great advice that was. And it gave me some hope. it gave me an idea like, okay, there's someone who thinks I have some value and that I could do something. And so I jumped out of that real big position. I was making lots of money. And I moved and started building my businesses. And in the process, continued to build out more businesses. So I had my kids entertainment company was my first business. I built in then my consulting company. And then I had a friend come to me and say, I really see this need for veterans and veterans transitioning out of the military. With your academic background, do you think we could create something? So with me, I never do anything small. So I thought, well, let's create a technical vocational college that can support veterans transitioning out of the military. And so I jumped in and, I always make the joke, creating a college is a little harder than it looks. And as I was, I was like, oh, let's just build a college. And hindsight, you look back and go, oh, how naive of me to think that I could just build this college. But we went after it, and a lot of support, a lot of help. We, over the last 5 years, built this out. And to add into that, one of my passions was really empowering women. As I climbed my way to the top, it was a struggle, and there was no handouts, there was no helping hand, and especially from women, there was not a helping hand. It was very much more of a, what can I do to stop you? And as I talked with a very good friend of mine, I said, I have this vision of empowering women, but not just empowering them, but for them to realize that we could be a superpower if we came together. And how can we bring that message out? And my friend said, well, it's like, I want women to know I'm not your competition. I'm your biggest advocate. And that really stuck with me, because I was like, wow, I've always been really competitive my entire life playing sports. And I hadn't thought of it like that. And so with the veterans, the college that we were building out, we started adding in empowerment programs for veterans, in particular for women veterans. We started there, and we started a program called Combat Boots to Heels. And that program helps women not only just transition out of the military, because women have a high suicide rate when they transition out of the military. They have a high homeless rate. Many of them are single moms as well. We started there, building a program, helping them transition, all free for them to do it. We've been getting donations and support. And then I said, maybe we should just take this up a notch. What if we start traveling to different states, letting women come in, get trained on speaking, and tell their story? Because there's not a lot of platforms for, and I don't want to say the average woman, because I don't think any woman is average, but let's say non-celebrity, for the non-celebrity to get on the stage and tell their story. And a lot of times as well, they didn't have the tools or know how to tell their story. So we started the Lead and Empower Her conference and She Talks, which now what we would do is we would not only bring in veterans to this conference, so we would fly them in for free, pay for the hotel rooms, bring them in to tell their stories, but we also mix them with all the other women. And so we've been touring for the last year, going from state to state, bringing in anywhere between 10 to 15 women to tell their stories. And then as well, people coming into the event. And so that's the short version of my journey so far and what I've been doing. And we did get slowed down with COVID. We did have to cancel the tour, which was a little disappointing, but we're ramping back up and working to get that tour going again in 2021. And in the meantime, we're supporting as many veterans, women business owners, men business owners as we can with our nonprofit. And doing what we can right now to just keep the empowerment going, keep the support going, because we know it's a big struggle right now. And so that's been my short version of my journey. And I'm very much in a place that I never would imagine myself. I thought I had this one path, and that's the path I had to go. And when I didn't go that path, very much felt like a big failure for a while, because I didn't realize that wasn't really my path at the time. So that's a little bit about what I've been doing over the last couple of years.
So we talk about going through the path, right? And everybody says, go to school. If you follow this path, you will be successful. And that's what I've been hearing ever since I grew up. It was my mother's dream that one of us go to college. And coming from Kenya, I started college very late. I did it when my kids were in college as well. It took me 9 years to get all my degrees straightened out. I don't have a doctorate, but I have a master's. But as I grew like you, it became apparent that my heart wasn't where everybody thought it should be. So you have to find your own path. And that's what I tell people who are looking for their niche, because whatever you think whatever path you are on at that present time is what circumstances put you right there. But you have to now come out of that circumstance and become uncomplacent to take the next step, because now you are aware of what you think you want to do. But like you, if you are constantly evolving, you start with something else and then you move in. Not saying be a squirrel so you can jump into different things at the right time, but as you take the first step, the second step will show up.
Absolutely. And I always tell people I use an adaptive leadership style because things are constantly evolving. I mean, go back 5 months ago and when suddenly things were getting shut down and we were homeschooling our children, I always made the joke to my husband, don't make me homeschool my children because I'm not good at it. And then lo and behold, I have 2 children at home, 8 and 11-year-old, that I'm suddenly having to homeschool. And I have 3 companies I'm trying to figure out, how do I keep these alive? And, I think a lot of times the cultural norm puts us into boxes of the expectations. And we very much want to meet that expectation, because if not, cultural norm says you're not successful. And so when I started breaking out of those boxes, it was really hard. Like you said, taking that first step, because it was like, well, am I failing? I'm going down a path that the cultural norm says I really shouldn't go down. And what happens if I go down that? And so that was for me really terrifying, that moment where I walked away from the really big job that I was making all this money from. And it was like, yeah, I'd made it. And I remember thinking, gosh, everyone's going to think I'm a failure. And I just couldn't handle the job when it just wasn't what I knew I could do. I knew I could do something that I wanted to do that I loved. And so, I agree, being adaptive. And I say it all the time, you got to be adaptive leader, and you got to be able, you need to be able to evolve on the spot sometimes. And I remember the day I picked up my kids and they're like, hey, school's closed for so many weeks. And I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Like what? And then it was like, well, are we canceling all these conferences that we have set up? Are we canceling the tour? And it was suddenly like, no, we don't have to cancel that yet. And then a couple of weeks in, we're going to have to cancel all this. We're going to have, so I always tell people, and as a mother as well, I learned I had to adapt and evolve quickly as well with my children.
But I think women are very quick on their feet because they do it faster. Mm-hmm. Even though sometimes we don't think that's real and we shouldn't, and we have that negativity inside of us, but we are quick to adapt. Mm-hmm. My question to you then is, you started helping out veterans. Are you a veteran yourself?
I'm not, but both my grandfathers are.
Well, thank you for the service. But why was that so near and dear to your heart?
When I was working in academia, I not only living in San Diego here, we have a very high military population. We're a military town. And I worked with a lot of veterans. And something that I saw as a professor and then as a chair and a dean was that our veterans were constantly asking, do we have programs? Do you have help for this? And I would say, well, no. And I hadn't thought about these programs we needed. And then a very dear friend and business colleague of mine, Dr. Karen Walker, she's been a Marine for 21 years, recently retired. She came to me and she said, there's some programs out there, but there's not a lot of programs for women veterans. And we need something. And how did she know? She was transitioning out of the military with a PhD, a high-ranking officer. I mean, a very brilliant woman. And she was struggling to find a job. She was struggling to transition. And I remember her talking about that being one of the toughest years of her life. And that is where she really opened my eyes to the need of veterans and what we can do to support. They have a unique transition, different than the ones that we have. It's just such a different transition. And so as I started talking to more veterans and learning about what their needs were, and especially our women veterans, not to discount our men by any means, but there's just not a lot out there for the women veterans and their unique needs. I realized that I could help fill that gap. And, my whole, mantra is that I want to empower people. I want to support people. I want to help them problem solve. And if I can do that, then that's my passion. That's my niche. That's where I want to go because, when I think about it, when it's all said and done, if we love what we do and we can love people while we're doing it, then for me, like my purpose has been fulfilled. And that's how I got into, that. And of course I live in Coronado, California, and San Diego has a little island. It has 3 Navy bases now. So we're predominantly, it's mostly military. And so I get to be around military families all the time, children. And it's really a blessing to be part of their lives. And that's how I started getting into that. And of course I have a big passion for empowering women as well and helping them in their paths.
Yeah, San Diego is heaven on earth to me. And
Yeah.
it's like when somebody says they're from San Diego, my heart beats a little bit. What advice, you've gone into transitions quite a few times, you've adapted. What advice do you tell people if they are starting out with their first niche or they are niching down because they have a business and need to niche down?
Great question. When I was transitioning a couple of things, from one industry to another, there was a couple of things that I realized I really needed. One was obviously a support group, because the transition is not easy. And if you're an entrepreneur, for all those entrepreneurs out there, probably especially now in the last 5 months as a business owner, entrepreneurship is probably one of the toughest jobs you have. You will work harder for yourself than you will work for anyone else. And it's all on you. And so having a good support group, obviously my husband was and is wonderful, supporting me, my family as well. And I made sure to also find some really great business colleagues. So whatever support group you can build, whether you're a new person transitioning or you've been doing this industry for a while, is really important. I also learned, as well as I was transitioning, that, we have to be a little forgiving of ourselves, because there are going to be successes and there are going to be failures. But that failure doesn't mean that it's over. Failure to me just means that I have to rethink and be creative on how I can go after that in maybe a different direction. And so I always say, my failures have shaped me. My successes have been great, but my failures is what helped me move to where I am today. So understanding and knowing that you're not perfect and that that's okay is important when you're transitioning. And then also, sometimes people try and transition really fast. I just got to get into this new thing and do it right away. And that a lot of times can cause chaos. And so when I transitioned, I made sure, I had a family and I couldn't just drop my job and have no salary. It took me a good 3 to 5 months to transition out of that industry as I set up other things for myself so I could make sure that I was making my money and that I was transitioning in a right way. So take your time, do your research, make sure you have the support you need, because unless you just are able to hop into that new industry and have this big, huge salary, which is not always the case, you want to find that and find the right way to transition. So that way, when you do it, it's smooth. And for myself, that's what I did. It took me, I think, 3 or 4 months to get out of being in that job while I kind of grew things. And then I had to really have a growth plan. Like, how am I going to sustain myself? How is this going to be sustainable for me and my family? And for me, my family is my life. So, I always tell people, I don't mind working hard for my family to give them the best life I can give them. And if that means I only slept 3 hours one night, then I only slept 3 hours. So I would say, having a great support group, and sometimes maybe it's not your family, maybe it's your friends, maybe it's business colleagues, but have some support there, knowing and researching your niche or where you're going or your path and having an idea. Look at the people who've gone before you. We always say you don't need to remake anything, learn from the past and what they've done and how can you create your unique part. In our instant success world, we're like, we want to be millionaires overnight. We want to be successful overnight. But if you look at the millionaires and the billionaires and the successful people, it's been a lifelong journey. Sure, there's a couple that jumped in and got lucky, but you look at those people and you think, well, they're successful in their industry because they've been doing this for 35 years. And so, look to those people to be a bit of a mentor for you. And reading is so important. I read all the time. all the different authorities books on everything, because we have to be lifelong learners. We don't know it all, and you can learn from someone else. And
speaking of books, you said you authored one book, but I know you authored two.
Yeah, so I do. I have a bunch of academic books that I've authored, from dissertations and the academic level, which are great for any academic practitioners. The rest of you might find them not as interesting. But then I have two books. One I wrote with my colleague, and this was breaking out of the academic writing. This was I call real raw, honest books about women in leadership. So the first one's called Leading by My Ponytail: Why Can't I Wear Pink and Be the President? And that is a book with my colleague, Dr. Karen Walker. And we talk about our journeys, her in the military, me being a CEO, and we kind of compare those and show how we traveled through this very male-dominated environment. And it's very much a tips and leadership book for women. My second one that just recently came out was Authentically You, Empowering Your Way to Success. And that's a very raw version of my journey. And I say raw just because it's very honest. I share a lot of things that I would have considered failures, that I would have never wanted people to know about me. But I felt like this is the time that we have to talk about this, especially as women. We have to be really honest about what's happening, because other women are going through this and they don't want to be honest about it. So that one was a tougher book for me to write. One of my interviews was saying, I probably cried in every other chapter I wrote, because as I wrote it, I was reliving it. And then I was going, oh my God, do I really want everyone else to read this about me? Recently came out, and I'm very proud of that one, because like I said, it was a tough one to write, but I've gotten a lot of great feedback. And so that is my very open, honest journey as a woman, as a leader, as a mom, as a wife, into my authentic path.
And how do people find you?
So you can go on, if you're wanting the books, you can go on Amazon, Google Dr. Julie Ducharme. Those books will come up. You can go to my website, drjulieducharme.com, and that will get you to all my other websites, which has my businesses and so forth. And
awesome. Thank you so much for your time.
And that's my goal as well, with the talking about your authentic path, is just that there's so many women I see with so much potential. My perspective has changed quite a bit on, women and supporting women. I'm competitive, but only in sports. And I really like to see the success of all their women. So, for yourself and anyone else listening, I'm always willing to give advice, consults, whatever I can to support women. You've got a cool book out, you've got something awesome, send it to me. I'll promote it. I mean, I'm all about that. So, I'm just excited that we could get on and talk about this, because this is definitely a passion of mine, and I know a passion of yours as well.
Ladies and gentlemen, here we have found a fan in Dr. Ducharme. So go ahead and look her up. Let's read her books. Let's support each other. We are not here to be in competition. We're here to in collaboration. I write that point in my book as well, because that's something that you have to do, because without that, you can't go up. There are many people who's going to throw you down while you're climbing up the stairs. Yeah. But if you do it together, it's the most amazing thing that's going to happen.
Absolutely.
For those of you listening, go ahead, like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And for those of you who want to be a guest on my show, go ahead and contact me. I'm on Munira's Musings on YouTube and Facebook, and there's only one Munira Zahabi in the world. So go ahead and contact me, and we'll get you on your show. I want to know what your niche is and how you're helping other people. Have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Munira's Musings with your host, Munira Zahabi. If you enjoyed our show, please share and subscribe to this channel. And for more content, please join our Facebook group.